everyone's email.
Well, we need to open up the meeting anyway with roll call, so we can start with that.
Oh yeah, so go ahead and do that. Michelle, go ahead and take roll call for vote and minutes, okay, everyone?
Yes, sorry, just opening. I had some technical difficulties getting on. Okay. Alicia Lewis Coleman.
Yes.
Michael Marino.
Yes.
Lisa Kaplan. Lisa, I see you. Lisa.
I know, I'm trying to unmute, sorry. Yes.
Thank you. Eric Diaz. Okay, I don't see Eric. Okay. Michelle Cooper Smith, yes. Herman Hewitt. I don't see Herman. Anisha.
I just moved her from attendee to panelist.
Yeah, I see her in participants. Anisha. You're off mute, but we can't hear you.
There's Eric.
Okay. Are you yes or no on the approval of the minutes? Yes. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
May Lee.
Yes.
Hey, Eric.
Oh, Eric, are you here? Okay, Eric. We're doing the roll call for the first vote.
Yes.
Thank you. Linda Jones.
Yes.
Alex Militano.
Yes.
Thank you. Trevor Holland.
Yes.
Paul Rangel.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anisha, for your audio issues, just if you're on a computer, click the arrow next to the microphone and make sure that there's a check mark next to whatever microphone or speaker device you're using. You might not have connected the audio correctly.
Okay, Michael.
Yes, ma'am.
It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Hold on a second. I'm just going to make you a co-host.
Okay, thank you.
Michelle, this is Jackie. Did you miss me?
Oh, I thought I called you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're right. Jackie Wong. Sorry.
That's okay.
I got confused when Eric joined.
That's all right.
Sorry.
Okay, totally fine.
Are you yes?
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Michael, just in case, if I have technical difficulties, I'm sending you a copy of Susan's report for you to post, okay?
Okay. We start with your report anyway, so I can open that up while you give your report if you want.
Yeah, I mean, like, I really don't have much to report except for the fact that Lisa, Michael, myself, and Susan, we met to discuss the trainings. And I think I'll let Lisa talk about that a little further during her report. But, you know, really quickly, I just want everyone to just be conscious of the fact that Zoom is a lot. I say it all the time. Zoom is a lot for a lot of people, right? Some people are not used to being on Zoom all day long. And when we get on Zoom, we get a tendency, some people get what I'm calling Zoom boldness. It's like what you won't normally say to people in their face, but you say it behind their back. I sent you all an email, or you say it on Zoom and you won't say it in their face. I mean, things like that. So I sent everyone an email. I hope everyone received it. No one responded, but I hope everyone received it and read it. Because after the last executive meeting, there was some feelings that were expressed, and I won't say whom the feelings came from, but I will say that, you know, a lot of conversation ensued after that last executive Zoom meeting. I really just want everyone to remind themselves that we have to be patient with one another. If you know you're in a leadership position, which all of you are in the leadership position, except for the people that are calling in, but you all in front of me are executive officers and you are leaders of your community. So we have to be mindful of what we are representing and how we come across to one another. And I get it, you know, like there may be some things that you're very passionate about, and you have situations where, you feel like somebody could have handled something differently. And that's all well and good. But I want you to keep in mind that everyone has a first time for everything. And nobody knows anything right off from the gate running out, So, I mean, I'm still a work in progress, as many of you should know that you are all a work in progress as well. The new chairs that are on board, Paul and Anisha, have been dealing with, some uncertainties. Like there are things that, stuff that's coming up for them that may not, necessarily be stuff that maybe they know right away, or they know how to respond to things, but we should not bark at them or make them feel uncomfortable for things that maybe they're not comfortable with just yet. We're all, like I said, a work in progress. We're not perfected yet. Although I like to say I'm beautifully and wonderfully made, and I'm perfect. That's why I have on the shirt tonight. I'm perfect because I know that I'm perfect to change who I am anytime that I can. Not that I am at all without flaw, right? That's what I mean by that. I'm not without flaw, and no one is. So we have to just learn to be a little bit more patient with one another. And remember that Susan too is also a work in progress, even though, she's a little more seasoned than many of us. And I don't take that for granted that we have her expertise on certain things, but none of us are experts on everything, right? So let's just learn to be a little bit more tolerant and patient with one another. That's all I need to say. Michael, thank you. Michael, your report?
Sure. So first chair's report. I did touch base with both Margaret Chin and Carlina Rivera's offices about co-sponsoring a town hall about workers' rights as we start returning to work. And they both seemed interested in that. And Gigi, Margaret's chief of staff, is going to reach out to the agency to see if the commissioner will participate in that again, like they did for Councilmember Levine. Once they have confirmation, we'll start working on dates. So hopefully we can do something soon around that. As we all know, it was announced this morning, we're going to phase 2 on Monday. This morning was a borough board meeting, and just a couple of things from that meeting. I was asked to ask the other chairs about elected official reports and how they're dealing with them, and their online meetings and challenges they've been having. And a number of chairs did report that they've been seeing their meetings getting a little bit longer as people are in the comfort of their home and whatnot. It was sort of an interesting array of responses as far as how people deal with electeds. Most seem to limit it to 2 to 5 minutes for the electeds. There was one board that noted that when a representative is giving an update, they don't allow board members to ask questions. They only allow board members to ask questions if it's the actual elected who's giving an update and not just their representative. One of the boards also said that they actually have a rotating schedule and they don't have all the electeds present at every meeting. They have half of them present at one meeting and then the other half present at another meeting. So all things that we can consider as we move forward with trying to manage our online meetings. Alicia, I don't know, did you have a chance to reach out to all the electeds prior to next week?
Not all of them, no. I did reach out to Harvey, but I wanted to ask you, Michael, did anyone respond to say that they were going to come out on Tuesday? Did they any request that they?
You mean electeds?
Yeah.
We don't really know until like the day before or the day of if they're actually joining us. That's the challenge. So
okay, so I'm just going to continue to reach out. I have reached out to Harvey's office. I reached out to Carlina's office. I spoke to the reps. I didn't speak to the actual rep, the actual elected official. And Elaine's office, yeah. So
I mean, when I'm facilitating that segment again next week, I'll just, before every single elected starts their update, I'll just remind them, we want you to keep it brief and we want you to keep it to the top 3 things going on that you need to report to us about. You know, if I have to do, that's what I have to do, that's what I have to do.
Yeah, but I will also continue to reach out to their offices, Michael. I don't want you to feel like you're in a compromising position that you have to say, like, you know, yeah, that's really helpful though. What the information that they shared with you was very helpful.
The other big news out of Borough Board this morning was that we were in that meeting as the mayor made the announcement about phase 2 and about outdoor dining. So we had a representative from DOT in the meeting who then gave a brief presentation about what the guidelines are, and took various amounts of questions from the board chairs as well as the community. And so just some things for people, you know, if you want to research it on your own, the website is nyc.gov/open restaurants. That website has all the information for restaurants on what they have to do in order to apply to have outdoor dining. They have to self-certify that they meet all the requirements. There are some diagrams on that website that show how their tables can be set up and what they can and cannot do as far as blocking pedestrian traffic. There has to be an 8-foot pathway for pedestrians. So obviously this is going to be an issue for a lot of restaurants who don't have wide sidewalks in front of them. There's also diagrams and measurements for what it looks like to be in the street and parking spaces as well. As I mentioned, the restaurants just have to self-certify that they meet the criteria. Nobody's going to be going out to inspect or to double check this. They're going to be relying on heavily, I believe, the community to report things. So they've set up a hotline as well, which is 888-SBS-4-NYC is the hotline to report issues. One of the other interesting things that I think will be an issue probably for some is that for restaurants that are setting up in the roadway in a parking space, they're allowed to do so even if there is a bike lane between the parking space and the sidewalk. They're not allowed to use the bike lane. They're only allowed to use the parking space on the other side of the bike lane. But that means that servers and customers and everybody are going to be going back and forth in the bike lane. So I can just imagine the issues that is going to bring up. That's pretty much it for me. And I see Michelle has her hand up. So Michelle?
Thanks for the update, Michael. That's really helpful. I just was wondering if they discussed anything about like existing, maybe Alex, if you know about this, any like existing SLA parameters that are on these, because most of these places are going to have some sort of liquor license, I imagine. So there was
a question, I believe, from CB2 about the liquor license issue and the fact that what the DOT is saying is conflicting with what SLA is saying. SLA is saying that restaurants need waivers. DOT is saying that they don't. So Susan was on the call as well, and she sort of corrected everybody about the waiver situation, that they are asking for waivers. Susan proposed something. The other thing I want to say about this is that DOT, they were not really well prepared for this presentation today because I think they were a little caught off guard. So they are going to be giving the presentation a more, I guess, thorough presentation again to the district manager's cabinet meeting. Usually the chairs do not attend that, but we have been invited to attend that as well. So they've asked that all questions from community boards get vetted through the district managers so that they can send them ahead of time so that DOT can be prepared to answer certain types of questions. So the SLA thing did come up and it was somewhat confusing. The other thing that this affects is that they're allowing this in all zones, not just commercial zones. So that was an issue for some other community boards who didn't want outdoor seating on side streets and things like that. So I believe Alicia, I don't have the email in front of me, but what Susan had emailed you and I earlier today about what she was proposing was that we only allow the waivers for restaurants that are in commercial zones.
Yeah, I did see that. Yeah, that's correct.
So that probably doesn't answer your question, Michelle.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's an answer to, you know, what's going on, but when is that meeting, the district managers meeting, just so that we can get questions to Susan before,
I believe,
if you know?
I don't know. I think there might be an email in my inbox about it, but
Okay, I'll just note it. I'll just put a flag in the notes.
an email to the executive board after this.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Trevor?
Yeah, I tried to catch as much as I can, but there are a couple of things that I didn't have clarity on. If there's a line of restaurants and they all want to have outdoor seating, but they're very close together and some of them have small storefronts, but big places behind that small storefront. Did they say anything about restaurants competing for space? Is there a limit to the amount they could put on? Are there borders? Does the border go from the door to door? Because I envision that all these restaurants, especially streets that are loaded with restaurants, are going to compete for every inch of real estate because it's now extremely valuable that's on the street. And I didn't see any clarity on, I didn't examine the website, but I didn't see clarity on that.
Restaurants are only allowed to use sidewalk space that measures the same as their frontage. So, you know, we all know there are some really tiny restaurants across our district and across the city. So there might be some restaurants for whom participating in this doesn't even make sense because they're only going to be able to put one table outside. They did say that if restaurants did have backyard space that they weren't currently using for seating, that they would be able to use that as well. Linda?
So if they need an SLA waiver, how do they get that?
It needs to come as a letter from the community board. So initially, when the first email I saw about this from Susan basically was saying that that the community board was being asked to produce a letter for every single restaurant, which would have made us have to do hundreds, if not thousands of letters. So Susan made some calls and worked it out where we can basically just send a blanket letter if we wanted to, that basically tells them the parameters that we're willing to waive the stipulations.
So if a restaurant wishes to get such a waiver, they should email Susan?
I don't want to commit Susan to that yet, because I think we're doing it as a blanket.
Yeah.
I mean, now,
the last time Susan did a blanket, she asked the bid for help, which is fine. But we have restaurants that are not in the bid. That they're in the Space Block Association area. And I've kind of taken on myself to try to help them. So I'd kind of like to know.
So that's a good question to ask Susan, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, let's ask Susan, who unfortunately isn't on tonight's call. I would say, for now, yes. They should feel free to email Susan for anything that they need. That's what the office is there for. But whether or not, like I said, I don't think the plan is for us to do individual letters. The plan is for us to do some sort of blanket waiver letter.
Right. Well, I'm sure they'd be happy to have their name put in the blanket email. It's just that they need to know how to get there.
Okay. Alex?
Alex?
I appreciate that you included me in the discussion, Michael, because those were the concerns I had. I'm glad that Susan worked out a way to address them. And that really was that the blanket one really didn't distinguish between commercial and residential zoning, which the mayor hadn't done at all. He references commercial corridors, but I gather that is meaningless. It means wherever there's a business and doesn't necessarily relate to what the specific zoning is. So a waiver a standardized waiver that exempts like the places that are in the residential zoning areas presumably will require a closer, does that then require us to look more closely at the business? For example, if it wants to extend in front or extend into the backyard because we're not giving the blanket waiver? Do you know?
I don't know the answer to that question. but
Sorry, everything goes differently. Go ahead.
That's all right. No, I was just going to say that I don't really know. I mean, I kind of sound like the DOT rep now who didn't know answers to a lot of the questions today that she was being asked. But I don't really know the answer to that question, to be
No, I
honest.
think that,
Well, so those were this was all the things, these were all the things that I was thinking about when, when I understood what the issue was.
I think we should generate a list of questions so that we can all get back to everyone via email after this meeting is over. How about that?
Yeah, like I said, I will email everybody about when the meeting date is. That the presentation will be made to the district manager so that we can get questions to Susan that she can bring up at that meeting. That's it for me.
Thank you, Michael. Second Vice Chair's report. Oh, I'm sorry, Linda, you have your hand up. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. This whole thing is happening without any information. So everything that I've seen said, hey, they just go on this NYC website and they self-certify and they're in business. There's nothing about an SLA waiver there. So we have to get the right information out to our establishments as quickly as we can. So maybe, if Susan has the answer and she wants to let us know so that we can save her some work when we tell our community, that would be good.
Linda, I will say that sentiment that you just shared was the sentiment of most of the board chairs today on the borough board meeting.
Yeah, I think I spent almost all day today trying to get the straight answer to the park openings, and it was an all-day job.
Yeah, it's things are happening at rapid pace now, and there's not a lot of forethought being given into some of these things.
But I don't see why not. They've had some time to plan phase 2. Why is it suddenly a mess? That's just
Every phase is a mess.
Yeah. Like I said, watch the borough board meeting and you will hear somebody say exactly what you just said.
Yes, well, see, I'm just right in there. Thank you.
All right, Lisa?
Okay, so as was previously mentioned, there was a meeting in the past week to discuss the planned training sessions that we've been talking about for a while, and it was agreed that the first one would be held, as we talked about before, on the 29th, and that that would entail basically the operation, kind of basic CB3 board operations and procedures. And the agenda for that has been, as of this afternoon, approved by the speakers, who will be Susan and Michael and David Crane. Susan will do the role of the board office. Michael is going to do how a community board meeting runs. David will do 2 sessions on how to write a resolution and Robert's Rules of Order. And my plan is to send out an email today, this evening, when we get done, to all the board members, alerting them to both of the trainings, but include only the agenda for the first. The second one is going to be held on Tuesday, July 7th, right after the 4th of July weekend. We couldn't decide if 4th of July was celebrated on Friday or Monday, so we're going with Tuesday for the meeting. The agenda for that is a little bit in flux, because I think when we talked about it at the last time, we assumed that there would be basically 2 or possibly 3 sessions, one on land use, another on SLA, and the third on landmarks. I think we're good. I haven't heard definitively from Alex, but my guess is Alex is going to be as cooperative as usual and do that. Am I right, Alex?
Yeah, I emailed you back.
You said you were going to read it over and just, but okay, fine. Yeah, yes, I got your email.
No, I said I thought I had, I said I read it and I thought I had responded, but my answer was, yeah, sure.
Oh, okay, great.
That's why I didn't respond. I thought I already had.
I see. I didn't see it, so thank you. Great.
You're welcome.
And Linda has agreed to do a piece on landmarks and how that works, and to write up a little one-pager. We decided we wanted one-pager on all of these topics so that the folks who attend will have something to take home with them and cherish. At least Michael's laughing at my joke. Okay. The one thing that's been a little complicated, Jackie and I discussed yesterday, and I think we've come to a consensus among everybody who was in a series of emails. We expected Jackie to do the land use presentation, but just the other day, I think it was yesterday, we got an email from the borough president's office that they were doing virtually the same thing. And they were doing it on Zoom, and it would be recorded and we could replay it. The borough president has done this very professionally a number of times. And it just seemed to, I think, both Jackie and I, that there was really no need for us to reinvent the wheel. And what we could do is just encourage people. Unfortunately, the first session that they're doing, as you can see from what's on the screen now, is on our community board meeting night. I'm not going to say out loud that from 6 to 8, we might not even get to our agenda items. If you wanted to go do that and then come on to our full board, I would never say a thing like that. But so the expectation was that we would use the this presentation and offer it for our board members to access electronically. And certainly, you know, I bet Jackie would be willing to come to the training on July 7th and answer any questions if people had a chance to look at it by then, or we could take questions electronically and follow up on anything that might be more specific. But I'd like to recommend that we do it that way. The only other thing I should probably...
Landmarks?
I'm sorry?
They have the same thing on landmarks.
Oh, so they do. Oh, I guess, oh, yeah, it's right in front of my face. Well, how do you feel about that? What you're thinking on that, Linda, or others? Do you think we should?
Well, I don't think the landmarks one conflicts with any other community board meetings for us. Yeah. So I think that we should just tell the new members that we strongly encourage them to attend. I don't think we can make it a requirement, but I think that we should strongly encourage them to attend the June 25th one on landmarks.
Doesn't it say it's mandatory for new members?
Does it?
No, it's up at the top. Never mind. I thought it was.
It's useful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So, yeah, I think Lisa, maybe in the email that you send out about the 29th training, you should just add something to that about the training on the 25th, you know, that's happening, and strongly encourage people to attend. The 23rd, the training on the 23rd about land use and zoning. So is the idea that we would just let that training happen and then ask the new members to watch the recording, or is the idea to excuse the new members from full board so that they can attend that training?
To record it and show it a different time, or,
okay.
Or to give them access to it at their convenience.
Okay, I'm fine with that. Jackie has his hand up, so I believe he has a question.
Yes, well, it's not really a question. I just wanted to say, I mean, I wish I could say I can do this presentation better than DCP, but of course I mean, for present, of course I'm not. So I think for effectiveness and efficiency reasons, I'll just encourage board members to take those 2 classes. So if anyone has question after watching the June 23rd video or after taking the June 29th online class, they should, and they still have questions, they should send me the questions before July 7th. So so I will have some time to address those questions and then bring it to the July 7th training after SLA, after Alex.
The only thing about that is, Jackie, I'm not 100% sure when we're going to get access to the recorded version. I mean, maybe we'll get it right away. I don't know if Susan has talked about that, but you know, I worry if we don't get it right away, people might not have a chance to review it in time to have questions, you know?
So the June 23rd is 2 weeks from before July 7th, and 29 is 1 week before July 7th. So let's just hope that they will make those videos accessible to the, I mean, June 29 is 1 week before July 7th, so it will be accessible for board members. And June 23rd is 2 weeks before that. So hopefully they will provide the video.
My assumption is that, I mean, they're doing it on Zoom and the video typically processes overnight and is available the next day. So unless they're planning on editing it or something like that, they're probably going to post it relatively quickly. And if not, we can probably just ask for it. I will also say, I don't remember if it was land use or landmarks that I went to, but I did go to one of these trainings last year or the year before, and I still have the slides. So I can look and send those to you guys as well, because they send out the slides after you attend the training so that you have them. So if I still have them, Jackie, I'll send them to you just so you can see. I'm assuming they're probably updated, but it might be helpful.
Thank you,
I will
Michael.
say, you know, my comment was always going to be that I believe that in-house trainings are always better than outside trainings, but I know that the Borough President's Office does a great job at just a blanket training. Like, they do a great job of doing this great training. But at the same time, I thought it would be a great opportunity for new members to and newly appointed members to get to know who the chairs are, and you know, just share different experiences as far as that your committee. I mean, like, it's more intimate. I feel like it's more intimate, and that's the reason why I said I wanted to encourage us to have our own training in-house rather than to go send them out and it's like everybody across the city is taking the same training. That's cool, but I mean, for us, I like for us to be more connected, right? That's just who I am. I'm just one of those people. Kumbaya. But you know, so that's just it.
Sorry. Linda has her hand up, but before we get there, in case nobody noticed, I'll scroll down, there is a third training, second, more advanced land use training that is planned as well. And that's the same night that we're planning our first training. Just make you aware. I don't think we'll have.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think the new members would maybe go to that, but considering that they're just taking the 101, but some of our current members might be interested in that.
Yeah.
Linda?
Yeah, well, I mean, they're going to spend 2 hours on landmarks, and when we do our training, presumably we'll spend 15, 20 minutes on the subject.
It's true. Yeah.
They would get a lot more thorough
information
if they go to the class.
You're right.
But I take your point also, Alicia, that how we do it in Community Board 3 might be interesting to people.
What if, with regard to landmarks, we added something, if you'd be willing, Linda, that just talked about what the landmark areas are in our district and some of the key things that you've been looking at over time. Would that be a useful addition to the more general?
I think it is. I think it's good. I think for people to understand how to know if something is a landmark, how to find out what to do if they see something bad going on, somebody messing with a landmark the way they shouldn't, to how to report that. So yeah, there's a lot that can be said.
Why don't we do that? And that way we can, I don't see the same need in land use, to be honest, but that way we would have both an SLA and a landmarks section in the second training.
Okay. I'm good with that.
I'm good with that too. I think that's a good idea. Because, the landmark session from the Borough President's office is going to be very broad. So I think if we do a little 10, 15 minutes about, how CB3 handles landmarks, it'll be beneficial.
And what those landmarks are. Yeah. Okay. So what my plan was to just go through the detailed agenda in the first email and then say that there'll be a second email that will describe the second training that'll come out in about a week. And just so, because I feel like it's overload of information. But I will also mention the borough presidents trainings that are happening in the meantime.
Sounds good. Well, I thought but we're also highly suggesting that they attend the landmarks one.
Yeah. Okay. But okay. Okay. I feel like it's a little over. Okay. Fine. Will do.
Okay.
Mei Lee has her hand up.
I just want to note that some of those trainings like landmark and land use that the borough president has is useful for all board members to go to, whether or not they are on the committee. I have been to those trainings, and it's not that I want to become an expert on land use, but it is discussed at full board, and other members should have an idea of what is being talked about. So it's good to encourage everyone to go. And then also, in addition, we have our own specific,
I agree with you, Mei Lee.
training.
Yeah, the email from the borough president's office went to everybody on the board, and the email that Lisa is preparing is actually going to go to all of CB3 members, not just the new members.
Right.
Alex?
I will say that when I first started, which was a long time ago, these trainings, not the advanced one, but the landmarks training, there was another training. They were mandatory trainings, and if you haven't suggested it already, because I may have missed it, I would suggest that you strongly encourage people to actually go to the rudimentary trainings, especially the land use training, if they're new members. Because I agree with Mei Lee. They are very helpful, and they give them a good foundation.
Yeah, I think the mandatory trainings are the ones about like conflict of interest and stuff like that.
Land use used to be a mandatory training, and there was a resolution writing training that was mandatory, but I started in 1998, Michael.
Yeah, you were still under Scott Stringer.
Over 25, Alex.
What? How old was I? I was like 2. I was the youngest board member. Forget anybody else, any other teenager.
Lisa, do you have anything else?
The borough president doesn't mandate.
I'm done.
I just wanted to say, Michael, that the borough president hasn't mandated those type of trainings in a while. I think, and even now during COVID, I don't think they're mandating anyone to do anything. I think they're encouraging. Yes, the conflict of interest absolutely was mandatory when I came on board too, but I was under Scott. I don't know.
You want me to speak to that? Because I can. Conflict of interest has to be mandatory because we're all required to do it. As city employees, and even appointed officials are considered city employees. So we all have to take the mandatory training. It's just every 2 years, so you forget about it.
Thank you, Alex. Lisa?
I just thought of one more thing. I should be sending this from my personal email. I'm fine with it if that's what I'm should be doing, but I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, whatever email you use for community board stuff, that's what you should send it from.
Okay, very good.
Okay, we have Susan's report, and I could either read it or you could read it at your leisure, but I think it says some really great stuff. Okay, let me just go through it piece by piece. Let's see. I can't see all of the screen. Michael, I have this. Let me close.
You want me to read it?
Can you see it better than I can?
Yeah.
Okay, wait.
The mayor issued guidelines for outdoor seating today instead of the proposed council legislation. Mayor's guidelines do not exempt residential areas. Additionally, the presenter at Borough Board said there's not necessity for a waiver for the CB stipulations. Again, this is what we talked about earlier. However, she read the guidelines with CB2 chair. Looks to us like waiver is still needed. They sent the guidelines to SLA, and head of licensing is reviewing, and we'll get back to them. They've been very responsive and quick. Involved agencies will be presenting at Borough Service Cabinet next Friday. It's next Friday, Michelle. They should have time to get answers by then, as they clearly did not know what they were talking about. Okay, trying to put it a little nicely. Spent last Friday on St. Mark's Place and Avenue A, emailing precinct to do something and trying to get cops out of cars to tell people to move. The CO responded as if I were not reporting accurately. Then it all exploded in the media on Saturday. Gail called her after a walkthrough Saturday evening that turned out to be a press conference with local elected and Ariel from Nightlife. Gail had about 10 police cars respond and SLA. They cleared the majority of the crowd, but left a lot of illegal drinking. There's been a brass band for at least 6 hours on 2 nights. There's a very big difference in the way precincts are responding. The 7th responds immediately and makes changes. We'll see what happens this weekend. I suggest follow up with the police, businesses, elected, Ariel from Nightlife, I believe, all in one on a Zoom to figure out how to make this work locally, but she doesn't have high hopes of it happening. We'll be spending a lot of time researching updated statistics for district need statements and preparing for budget consults. It's very hard to get the agencies to respond so far. They've had two meetings I've had so far. For 2 meetings, I've had to have OMB tell agencies to respond to us. Still working on parks and DOE for district level meetings. We had meetings with SBS and EDC, and we'll have one with the fire department tomorrow at their insistence.
Okay.
Michelle has her hand up.
Do you mind just sending me those notes for the minutes?
Not a problem.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so I wanted to also say that, let me see. How can I see this? Susan also sent a copy of the vote sheet and the calendar for everyone to approve. Did everyone get a chance to look at the calendar for meetings for July? No? Okay. So Michael, I just sent that to you. Can you share that screen?
I have it.
Okay.
The calendar or the vote sheet?
Both of them. They need to see both.
I have to do one at a time. So what do you want first?
Yeah, just do one at a time. Let's do the calendar first, Michael.
Oh, oops. Okay, hold on. This is the vote sheet. Hold on.
The middle.
Hold on.
There we go. Okay, so again, everyone, this is a draft. Susan needs to know by tomorrow morning or tonight if this is okay for your meeting dates for July.
Can you scroll down, please, Michael?
Yeah, I'm just going to run through it. Economic Development, July 8th. Health and Human Services, July 9th. Landmarks, July 13th. Transportation, July 14th. Our first exec committee meeting, July 15th. Parks and Waterfront, July 16th. SLA, July 20th. Oops, I zoomed right past you. Land use, July 21st. Arts and Culture Subcommittee, July 22nd. And then our second exec, July 23rd, and our full board, July 28th.
So yeah, it is in your email. Everyone should have gotten this email from Susan. Yeah. I'm on vacation from the 10th through the 17th, so I won't be around. But I'm always on the phone.
So does that mean you're not going to be at our exec on the 15th?
Not on the 15th, but I mean, remotely I could probably do it. I mean, yeah, why not? I'll figure it out. If I can't do it, I'll let you know, Michael. I'll let you know in advance. I will definitely let you know.
Does anybody want me to go back to their meeting date?
Michael or Alicia, could you give me a heads up on why we have 2 executive meetings?
Okay, so the reason why we started doing the 2 executive meetings was because of COVID. And we figured out that there were things that may have come up that we did not get an opportunity to talk about in the beginning of the month or towards the end of the month. Sometimes if we wait towards the end of the month, we might have missed an opportunity to share something or get something shared to the executive committee. So, and then there's times when we need approvals on things and we need to talk about things before we can get to the next exec. So that's the reason why we started doing the 2 executive meetings. Now, if we don't need it, that's what we said in the very beginning. If we don't need it, we won't use it. We don't need to have a second exec. But if we need to have a second exec, then we have to do it, right? This is just because of COVID. We're not physically able to meet. And so there's things that have come up. But Mr. Hewitt, if you don't feel comfortable.
That's okay. I just wanted to, you gave me all the.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to move to the vote sheet.
Thank you, Michael.
Sorry about the fast scrolling. I was at the bottom of it. So I'm going to go all the way to the top.
So I just want to make sure everyone is looking at this email that Susan sent out to you all. And if there's any corrections that need to be done, we need to send it to her ASAP. She needs to have it by tomorrow.
The only question I had on this, Anisha, I know for your committee, there's 2 resolutions that you said you were going to make a motion at full board just to permanently table them because they're not relevant anymore. And there is a note sort of at the bottom of this resolution, but I'm not quite sure if this note goes with the resolution above it or below it.
It went with 2.
So you might just want to take a look at that in your email and get back to Susan. There's another note at the bottom of this one too, but same thing. It's kind of unclear if the note is for which motion it's for. All right. We ready to move on, Alicia?
Yeah, let's go.
So I believe the next agenda item is committee structure. So this was a conversation that Trevor wanted to have or asked to be put on the agenda about committee structure. So Trevor, do you want to lead us off here and remind everybody what your questions were?
Questions are, I don't know if it relates to just my committee, but it had to do with the fact that we have a vice chair and a secretary. And obviously some of the emails go to me and the vice chair, and some go to me and the secretary. And my question was, are we looking for a standard as to how we have committees? Is it up to each committee person? I know previously, or our previous chairs have required that we have a vice chair. I think that was Jamie, but I'm not sure. And also, was that still in effect? Are we still required to have that? And I was also looking at trying to find the structure of each committee to see if we all have, or if other committees have a vice chair and a secretary, and how it's working. I don't know if mine has any difficulties, but with communication and sometimes sending out emails, it can be a bit challenging. So I was just curious as to other committees.
So let me start off by saying this. So every new chair of the community board has the right to say what's what and what's not. So if you don't want a vice chair or a secretary, you don't have to have it. But the thing is, those two positions make your life a little bit easier, Trevor. But if you feel is that if it's not effective for you, then we can eliminate one of them. I mean, I know that Mei Lee just lost her vice chair, right? Her vice chair stepped down. For those that don't know, Deborah Glass said that, you know, it's too much, whatever her situation is, she's not able to do it anymore. So she stepped down, so we removed her. So now Mei Lee has the option of just keeping her secretary, or if she chooses to appoint someone else as a vice chair. It's totally up to each individual chair. I know that Alex, you only have a secretary. Am I correct, Alex?
No, I don't have a secretary. I only have a vice chair.
You only have a vice chair. So, I mean, each committee is different.
He was my secretary.
He was a secretary, then you made him a vice chair. And so it's totally up to you as an individual chair as to what you want. Like Michelle is a vice chair, and then there's a secretary on transportation, right? And then every committee is different. If your committee is large, you might want to have a vice chair, because what if you're not there? You want to have someone there that can convey exactly what your message is, right? And you want them to run the meeting as if you were there. But if you foresee that this is not effective for you, then you can eliminate that position.
No, I got all that, but my question more relates to each chair. And the first question is, because it was mandatory, you're saying, and I pretty much picked it up, that it's no longer mandatory, because that was never taken, that rule was never taken out. And I understand each chair can do it differently.
I'm looking at the committee chair responsibility handbook, and I don't see anything in here that says it's mandatory that you appoint someone to be your vice chair or your secretary.
All right, so we're gonna go with that it's not mandatory. It's just a thing that a chair did. The second question, or the second thing, is I really wanted to hear from the other chairs as to what they have and how it's working. Not a long speech about it, but I'd like to hear from each chair as to whether they have a secretary and whether they have a vice chair, and the responsibilities of each one.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful, because I think, you know, like in Alex's situation, correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, even though Clint has the title of vice chair, he's basically doing your minutes, and that's something a secretary would normally do. Is that correct?
Yes, except during these virtual meetings, Jesse has been doing the minutes, and as an alternative to Clint, Jesse does the minutes. Really, because the minutes require certain information, I pick the best people, you know, the people who've proven that they're the best people at taking the minutes. I'll rely on them to take the minutes. Clint, I rely on him for a lot, but at the end of the day, I have to finalize the minutes myself, because sometimes the discussion goes to the SLA, and because the resolutions are going to the SLA, and I've been teaching them how to do it by drafting the resolutions in advance. They should be in sort of a uniform format, you know, with the information presented uniformly, even if it's going to be different from application to application. So I do that at the end.
Okay. So now let's hear from some of the other chairs. May, you've got your hand up.
Okay, so I have well, I had a vice chair and I still have a secretary. I believe that there should be some uniformity or maybe some best practices. I think we all need a secretary. We need somebody to take the minutes. We need someone to be there in case we can't be there. You know, I might get sick and not be able to attend the meeting. Someone else has to chair. So, so the minute taker can be the vice chair or the secretary. So the way it works in my committee is that if I'm not able to attend the committee meeting, the vice chair would take over. If both me and the vice chair can't attend the meeting, we both get sick at the same time, the secretary would take over. And then in addition to that, the secretary has the distinct duty of taking the minutes. I think that a smaller committee doesn't need 3 officers. You know, they can consolidate into 2, the chair and the vice chair. Maybe the vice chair takes minutes, or a chair and a secretary. A larger committee might be useful to have all 3. But and this is true of all organizations, the role of the vice chair is always a little bit more undefined. So, you know, that's all I have to say.
Thank you, May.
Thank you. Jack?
I have a vice chair and a secretary, and I find them both really helpful in conducting my meetings, especially during the COVID time. At the last land use meeting this month, Linda, my vice, helped me with managing the Zoom, and Michael Perlis, he took the notes for minutes. So I just find it really less stressful. And I also discuss with Linda on many issues. And sometimes I feel like that kind of cooperation is important for the committee, because you would like you are not alone. You get the support from your committee, and Linda is also really involved in my committee's operation. And I don't know about other vice in other committees, but that's my work with Linda.
Thank you, Jackie.
Okay, anyone else? I don't see any other hands.
I'm looking for a hand. Here's
Okay, Paul.
So I like having a vice chair, and it really helps. Michelle helps out a lot, and we spoke after the May meeting how the way this Zoom stuff is set up, you kind of need somebody to run the meeting, then somebody needs to run the Zoom portion of it, and she does that part. I'll run the meeting. And we tried out in June, we tried Ellen out in the secretarial role to take the minutes to alleviate what Michelle has to do. So we kind of distributed the responsibilities to make it easier to have this kind of meeting and function a little bit easier. Just because we thought about what the June agenda was going to be like with the amount of people we were expecting and the amount of people we saw in May, it helped out a lot for us. I've yet to chair a committee meeting outside of my laptop, so I don't know how that's going to look like when we go back to face-to-face stuff. So, but for June, I thought it made a lot of sense.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Linda and then May.
Okay, Linda.
Yeah, so in Landmarks is a tiny committee, and we just have a vice chair. And she has basically taken over chairing the meeting several times over the last couple of years when I was unable to be there. So I think that's enough for us. Our minutes are usually relatively simple also. Land use, over the last few changes of chair, I'm trying to think how far back it goes. I mean, I became a vice chair of land use a long time ago. There's always been a vice chair, at least over the last, say, 8 years or so. And so the it's kind of well defined, and as Jackie says, it's usually the person who's the vice chair is pretty strong also in the business of land use and can help with decision making and so on. And of course, so far Jackie has never been absent, so I haven't been able to chair in his place. And I've had a vice chair, and it works.
Thank you, Linda.
Having a secretary in land use is fabulous.
So if we find Jackie at the bottom of a staircase, we know Linda did it.
You got it.
Mei Lee? Who was next? Was it Mei
May,
Lee?
you're muted, May.
There we go. Okay, I think it would be useful at some point to have it in writing somewhere. Maybe it could just be a policy or a best practice or something in a manual that says what the role of a secretary is and what the role of the vice chair is. The secretary is very easy. They take minutes. The vice chair, I noticed that, so like what I mentioned, they take over if the chair can't be there. I think it's important to have that in writing, so at least they have something definite. The other thing about the chair and vice chair working together, that also depends upon a lot of, their dynamics and ability to work together. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So I don't know how to write that down. So yeah, I would like to see something in writing. So it would be helpful to the chairs and to know whether, and every chair, I feel, should have a minute taker. They should not be taking minutes by themselves.
Mei Lee, if I may.
And they should have someone to take over if they're not there.
Mei Lee, if I may interject just a minute. I think that your committee is kind of like unique because you have a very long name, and that long name also has separate things that your committee does, right? Because you have health and human services, youth, and senior services, and it's like it's a lot. And so the ideal was, when your committee got separated, was that someone would be dealing with youth services and senior services, and someone else would be dealing with health services and human services or whatever. But it was like two separate things, and we never really got an opportunity to like actually separate the two, right? Because it's always like kind of like cohesive, right? You guys are flowing together. But what happened was, I think that there are some, I don't know, I don't want to speak for her, right? But I think that there was a feeling that was conveyed to me that they wish that there was a separation of the two.
Go ahead, finish.
Yeah, I don't know how you separate that particular committee, because everything kind of flows together. It all is connected in human services, like youth services is connected in human services, right? So I don't know. I know you've heard this before, May. I mean, this is not something that's relatively new to you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so no, typically in other community boards, the education and youth, and sometimes the youth part is in a separate committee.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not,
Yeah, and that's something that we never talked about, but it was kind of like, maybe it should have been like a subcommittee and had like human services as like the main committee, and like
they talked about that too.
Youth and education should have been maybe a separate committee. This was something that was discussed a while ago with me, and I'm not really sure how the rest of the exec feels about that.
Well, let me close my issue. Thanks to all the chairs for giving me what happens in your committee. I'm going to keep the same structure. I agree with May that it's not a priority, considering everything, but that we should have something in writing. I don't have any conflicts. It's just sometimes with the communication of email, stuff is sent to the chair and the vice chair, and then the secretary is not aware. Like when we initially send out the draft minutes or draft forms, that doesn't go to the secretary, but I can work that out. But I've heard everyone speak, and I have a pretty good idea of how I want to keep it. So thanks to all the chairs. I was just looking for how you handle it in your committee.
And I agree with May. We will draw something up so that it could be a little bit more like permanent. Because I mean, I think that every chair leaves something behind as their legacy. So that is something that I could add on as my legacy, as that we'll have like a more permanent definition of what the roles and responsibilities are for those two separate positions. Thank you. Also, what I didn't say during my report, and I want to make sure Michelle adds this to the minutes, is that I have gotten, I think everyone except Wendy's, Wendy Lee's committee request form. I think we've gotten everyone else's. So we want to make sure that, and they don't have until like full board meeting. They have until full board meeting to submit them. And I just want to make sure that everyone is aware that everyone has submitted their forms of request. Very popular. Of course, you know who the popular committees are. And so we're looking into me talking to each chair as to what your space concerns are on your committees, how big your committees are, and what you're looking for, what levels of expertise you need, and what people are bringing to the table. I'll get back to you. And so now we're going to go into our committee reports. SLA?
There's nothing to report.
Thank you. Transportation?
So we met on June 9th. One resolution we did pass was the incident from Avenue D and 9th Street involving Officer Garcia. I believe everybody voted yes except for one present non-vote. It was a good conversation. It wasn't a lot of people didn't come out that I expected. It was a lesser turnout than I expected, but it was a good conversation, and I think everything went relatively well at committee last week. And district needs. That's it.
Thank you, Paul. Economic development, Anisha.
She reported last week.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I think she's still having audio issues.
Yeah. Anisha, we can't hear you, hon.
Nothing to report. She just put it in the
Nothing to report. Okay, thank you. Health and Human Services.
So we had our meeting in the beginning of the month. It was our first Zoom meeting. We talked about district needs. We had a couple of speakers. The secretary, Larissa, took over, was the co-host of the Zoom meeting. So that was, you know, and she really seems to enjoy it. And she's pretty good at it, actually. So that's been very helpful. And also a newer committee member, Thomas Rosa, took the minutes. So he was very thankful to be able to, you know, play and take on a new role and learn something more about the community board and, you know, be a little bit more helpful. So I thought that was good that new members were stepping up to take over other duties at the meeting. So we have quite a bit to go with district needs, and we will be discussing it at the next 2 meetings.
Yeah, May, I will say that your committee was a very interesting committee meeting. Naomi Pina from CEC1, she really had a lot of contribution. And I mean, like, there's things I didn't even consider. Like, I work for the DOE, and there was so many things I didn't even consider as far as like a need of like families, like kids when kids are home. I mean, we have so many children that have so many different types of needs. And so I thought that was really interesting. And just so everyone knows, I think, Michael, it was discussed today at Borough Board how so many of the children are going to lose access to internet because of the companies have now said that June 30th is the last day that they're giving their support for free internet access for students. So if there are students that need summer learning, and how their parents are going to get it, I don't know. I even proposed to the other community board chairs in the Manhattan was that if there are families that did not even qualify because they owed past bills, Verizon and Spectrum basically said they were not entitled to get services. So families would probably have to go outside somewhere to try and pick up free Wi-Fi. So this is crazy. I mean, it's really disheartening to me.
Yeah, generally I find that transcript to be very helpful. And it's something that we should try to do in the future because, some of the presenters are good, but sometimes when you hear them talk, it sounds a little bit disjointed or repetitive and you think it's not useful. But then when you look at the transcript, you pick up these tidbits like what Alicia was talking about. So, and then, we were able to capture it in the minutes and it points to some, to-do action items for the future.
Yeah. Thank
Trevor's
you.
got his hand up.
Okay. Go
I
ahead.
mean, I don't mean to put you on the spot, and I was trying to find the reference I had to it, but I know they announced a program for students in certain COVID neighborhoods for what would be a paid internship, sort of replacement for the Summer Youth Employment Program. The only community in our area was zip code 1002, which came in number 5 or 4 or something. But I don't really think that's been publicized to the folks in that neighborhood that their children can qualify for this stipend. And they don't have to be, in other neighborhoods, they had to be, and I don't remember the term, I'm just going to say they had to be in trouble or problem students. But for our zip code, they don't have to be, and there is an application process. But I really haven't seen a lot of publication about it. I'm going to try and pull it up, but was there any information on that, or are you aware of that?
I wasn't aware of it, and the information wasn't presented, but if I know anything, I'll let you know. But if you know anything, you let us know.
Sure.
Okay. Land use?
So I don't have much to report for our land use meeting, but I have a small update on the Two Bridges rezoning plan. So DCP did not give us a very encouraging response on the rezoning plan, and in previous exec, we had agreed to hire a land use consultant to make comments to those DCP response. And this afternoon, I received a draft memo from the consultant. That memo discusses the future strategies and options for this project, but I just did not have the time to read it this afternoon. So I don't have much of the detail to share with you. And Trevor, you also copied it in the email, so you have it. And previously, the co-applicants also briefly talked about the feasibility to do a presentation to the committee members in August, but that has not been confirmed yet. So I will follow up on that. And what else? Oh, money. So we had allocated up to $10,000 for this project, and so far we have spent $4,000. And also on June 25th, which is next Thursday, there will be a community town hall for 70 Mulberry Street. I believe the information is already on CB3 social media. So please share that with anyone who you know who is interested in this topic. And that's all I have to report.
Thank you, Jackie. Landmarks, Linda?
Nothing to report for landmarks, but to just add to what Jackie just said, that town hall meeting probably should be on our website as well as on our social media because we are a sponsor of it.
Yeah, I thought it was. I thought Michael, it was going to get.
I looked for it, I didn't see it, but that doesn't mean.
Okay. All right. So Joe is online with us now. So.
But Joe doesn't do our website.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Not Joe. Okay.
No, that has to go to Susan. I'll email her.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, Parks.
We had 2 resolutions. One was for the Eloy side College Center's compost yard, which we voted to make sure they can stay in there until substantial construction begins. We also had a resolution for the fire department's renovation. Nothing too controversial about that, other than us requesting that they install a light along the bike path on South Street, which is heavily used. Maybe not within their sort of what they can do, but we'd like for them to talk to DOT about it. Next month, ESCR will have a very robust update. Right now, it's probably the only thing on the agenda, which will cover a lot of the questions that people have been having. So they are prepared, and they will work after 5:30. That was the issue last time. but they've since changed because they were told due to COVID that they were not allowed to do anything after 5:30. We're also writing a letter to the city for an important topic for the Brooklyn Bridge Montgomery Coastal Resiliency Project, which is the area between Montgomery Street and Brooklyn Bridge. We've learned that the way EDC operates is that they front cash for projects and then they get reimbursed. EDC has basically said they have no money because they've used it all for COVID related activities. Even though there is over $200 million sitting in the federal pot, they can't pull from it because they don't have the ability to front the money. It's the way the city operates in OMB, so we're in serious threat of not meeting that spending deadline. The city has partnered and written a letter with other states who are facing the same issue. But this is a program that's fully funded, that is in sort of jeopardy. The EDC rep did not sound optimistic, which is also troubling. But the fact that we have a fully funded project, almost $250 million from the federal government, and we can't spend it because of the way the city operates is distressing. So we're working on a letter. In fact, Jim just drafted one 30 minutes before the meeting, which I'm going to go over. But it just shows you how the city works and how money can get wasted, even though a project is funded.
Okay, thank you, Trevor. NYCHA Section 8 Subcommittee, nothing. Arts and Cultural Subcommittee, Anisha, did they have anything? Not yet, because they're going to meet in July. Chinatown Neighborhood Planning Subcommittee, nothing to report. They haven't met. Any old business? Any new business? Okay. I just want to let everyone know I will not be at full board on Tuesday night. I'm working the election for the primary. So Michael will be running the committee. He will be chairing the full board. So I'm gonna try my best to help him out from virtual and sending him nothing but well wishes to our full board. I will say this as we close out. Some of the new members were freaked out. I've had to send out several emails to the new members so that we don't lose them. I mean, like, you don't want people to feel like, yikes, that was a horrible first meeting for a lot of them. So, and I sent out emails just assuring them that that's not the norm. We don't normally go until 11:30 at night. So, reach out and touch your committee members and just let them know, like, full board is not the opportunity for everyone to get long-winded and get crazy with it. Please, everyone, let's give hope a chance. So let's not turn this into another event of craziness. I am going to continue to reach out to the elected officials to remind them that it's 3 major topics that they want to share, and they should try to keep it under 10 minutes. And I do agree with Michael. The comments from full board members really should be very short, and they can also reach out to the elected officials themselves. They know how to do that. Linda?
I seem to be very talkative today for some reason, but I seem to recall last time we all met that we talked about a parliamentary procedure rule that would let each committee member speak only twice.
Right.
So that's what I was going to say, Linda. So again, as I mentioned, I think in our last meeting, I was not prepared to run the last meeting. Alicia didn't tell me that she was going to be counting on me to run it, so I was just sort of caught off guard and didn't have, wasn't ready. But I'm ready for Tuesday, and I've been brushing up on some of the Robert's rules, and we are going to institute the rule about you can only speak twice per agenda item. We are also we had talked about disabling the chat feature because of the sort of secondary meeting that was going on.
Oh, yeah.
the issue with that I discovered is that you can only disable the chat feature in the meeting format. In the webinar format, you can't disable it. You can stop the attendees from being able to chat, but you can't stop the panelists from being able to chat. So we are going to leave the plan right now is to leave the chat room open for everybody for the first hour of the meeting to take attendance and whatnot. We are going to make, or I am going to make several disclaimers that the chat room should only be used for attendance and for people who are experiencing technical issues to let us know that they're having technical issues, or for reps to post links to newsletters from their electeds or whatnot, and that it should not be used to have any secondary conversations that are relevant to the proceedings of the meeting.
Trevor had his hand up.
Quick question, Michael, and the answer is probably no, but is there a way for the chat to go to the co-host or the host of the meeting only?
Not in the webinar feature. In the meeting feature, the chat is much more pliable, and you can you can do that in the meeting feature. You can only enable people to chat with the host. But right now, so like our chat room is open right now. The only options I have is for the attendee, is to limit the attendees' ability to chat. So the attendees' ability to chat could be with nobody, can be with all the panelists, or can be with all the panelists and all the other attendees. I can't limit the panelist ability to chat with each other.
But you can do that in a committee meeting.
In a committee, yes, because so for full board and for exec meetings, we're using a webinar feature.
Correct.
For committee meetings, we're just using the meeting feature. And the meeting feature gives you much more openness with restrictions in the chat box.
Right. So I'm just putting a bug in your ear for the Parks Committee. I'd like it that way, so it only goes to the host of the company.
Okay. So yeah, just remind me that for those of you, I mean, I'm mainly only running Trevor's and Paul's meetings right now. Everybody else has sort of taken over their own meetings, and thank you for that. But usually I try to log on a little early so that I can connect with the chair about how they want things to run. So if I forget, Trevor, just remind me before the meeting starts.
Gotcha.
Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Thank you, Michael.
And
Thank you, Linda. Everyone have a great evening.
I have to take the roll.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Michelle, take the roll.
Alicia.
Yes.
Michael.
Yes.
Lisa.
Yes.
Eric.
Yes.
Michelle, yes. Herman.
Yes.
Anisha. If you want to give me a thumbs up. Okay, thank you. May.
Yes.
Thank you. Jackie. I won't forget.
Yes.
Thank you. Linda.
yes.
Alex.
Yes.
Trevor.
See?
Gracias. Paul.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Go Tuesday.
Buenas
Go
noches.
Tuesday.
Yes.